Spoiler alert! You're listening to the Comics Online Podcast. Season 19. Episode 7. 1984. Broadcast live from FXBG Public Radio July 1st, 2019. This episode, Kevin and Troy David time travel to 1984 to chronicle the best of that year's pop culture. Topics include comics, music, movies, TV, and games. Will the Time Lords make it back to the present day? Will they even make it to 1985? Fight a desperate battle against incredible odds as we traverse the 1980s for everything geek pop culture.
Converting earthly language into thrust. As you kneel before Azawa, Legend of Zelda's turn to dust. Podcasting from the future like your time was dead and gone. And we rock the best site like comicsonline.com. Level 12 cybernetics, vibranium power acts. You communicate with snail mail while we wireless adapt. We are more than ECI as we descend to blow your spot. You're a copy of better tech like your name was GoBots. You hoping for iTunes, but little noob, you in the danger zone. We're all the best leaders like Serpentor on his throne. Written by Stan the Man, don't you ever try to serve thee. New got up this book like we were drawn by Jack Kirby. Hunger like Sinistar, consumer culture then Galactus. Final Fantasy domination with our super geeky tactics. From the days of Marconi to Buff and Loud Investment City. You can hear us on every radio, stolen in Vice City. From leaping tall buildings to going off like gamma bombs. Switch your internet browser to comicsonline.com.
Hello again and welcome to the Comics Online Podcast, Season 19, Episode 7. I'm your host, Kevin Goswan, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host, Troy David Phillips, The Flash.
Ladies and gentlemen, since we are going back in time yet again, I thought, wouldn't it be apropos to wear a shirt of a character, a major important character from DC Comics, who frequently is involved in some kind of time travel shenanigan?
That does make sense, Troy. I am also doing the same thing, clearly, because Godzilla, as you see him over here, has transcended time and stuff. No. Thanos has gone through the Siege Perilous and come out the other side on my t-shirt. And now he's just a t-shirt image, and sorry about your luck, Thanos.
Now, Kevin and I had actually talked about doing a show where we discuss some of the magic MacGuffins of the Marvel Universe, like the Infinity Gauntlet, the Cosmic Cube, the Ultimate Nullifier, the Overkill Horn.
This will happen.
This will happen.
At some point.
It turns out Kevin hasn't actually read as many of those stories as I have. I'm a little surprised.
You know, Troy, I think we should have, as a special guest on that show, I think we should have Enos from Lost in the Long Box.
Well, we should certainly do that. Now, it appears that we've gone dark.
But
there we are. And
we're back.
We've gone light again. We've come back into the light. Wait. Are we supposed to go into the light? Or did we not go into the light?
Carol Ann? No, that was 1982, Troy.
So tonight, Kevin and I are on the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, we are.
Sherman and Peabody.
How far are we going to go back?
We're going to go back to the past. Back to the past. We're going to go back to 1984 tonight, and we are going to start with 1984, and I'm just going to give you a slice of the music. Now, I hesitate to say the best of, because I'm going to cover some lights that aren't necessarily the best, but I'm going to cover them all the same. Give you a little piece of what was going on musically in 1984, and you know what? Are you ready, Kevin?
I'm ready if you are, Troy. What do we got here?
Well, you know, when it comes to music in 1984, let me just say I was born ready in 1966, which is to say that in 1984, I turned 18. This was me achieving adulthood. Let me say this. Adulthood was a privilege that I didn't completely deserve, but I got it anyway. 1984 also was the year of the Pretenders learning how to crawl. Their 1984 album, and Kevin's playing a soundbite from The Middle of the Road, one of the singles from that album. The Pretenders learning to crawl also gave us Back on the Chain Gang and My City Was Gone, but it gave us other hits like Thin Line Between Love and Hate, 2,000 Miles, Thumbelina, Watching the Clothes Go Round, Time the Avenger. So many good songs on that album. I absolutely loved it. It was, again, for the Pretenders as a band, it was, there's the album. So the Pretenders are now a 4-piece band, and Chrissy Hynde has a daughter, and her daughter is literally learning to crawl, and the band has put themselves back together after having gone through some internal changes and some personal trials and challenges. And man, what a band the Pretenders were. I absolutely love their stuff. Moving on, in 1984, we also got Wang Chung, Points on the Curve. Now, you might have already been familiar with the single Dance Hall Days. Well, this is the album. There is the album cover, Points on the Curve. So not only did Dance Hall Days come off of this, but there was also the song Lovers Can Never Be Just Devoted Friends, The Waves on the Beach. There were other good songs on this album. And of course, much later, Wang Chung would give us Everybody Have Fun Tonight. But
Right.
that was much later in their career.
And they were like rappers in their repetition of their own name within that song.
Everybody was Wang Chungin. Now, something else that was going on was there was the band, the Jefferson Starship. Now, some of you are familiar with the Jefferson Starship and their incarnation as Starship. And in the 1980s, I believe it was actually late 1984, early 1985, they gave us the hit single, We Built This City. Prior to that, they gave us the last album as a band, as that lineup of the band, which was Nuclear Furniture. The Nuclear Furniture was known for songs like Laying It on the Line and No Way Out. But Nuclear Furniture had a great many good songs on it. The deeper into the album you go, the better the songs get. Musician Peter Wolf, not the same Peter Wolf from the Jag Isles Band. Peter Wolf helped produce some of that music and gave it that distinct sound. However, as the band was drifting apart, Grace Slick, the female lead singer of the band, she put out her 4th and final solo album. It was called Software. Now, the big single off of that album, which, if I remember correctly, didn't chart very highly, if it charted at all, but the song was actually called All the Machines. And it was Grace Slick sort of throwing some negativity toward the concept of technology just overtaking our lives. Kept playing a little sound piece there.
All right.
And there she is, Grace Slick. Don't You Want Somebody to Love, White Rabbits, that Grace Slick. This was her final album and final solo album. Eventually, she would retire from music because, as she put it, she didn't want to be an aging rock and roll woman. She wanted to get out while the getting was good. But along with Software, which didn't perform that well, was a song that actually performed very well, and that was from the musician Rockwell. You remember? You always feel like somebody's watching you.
Oh, I've got no privacy, Troy. Well, it's because Troy's like there at my bathroom window, and really just make sure you put away the ladder, Troy.
One,
I don't want to trip over it. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't use the shower on the ground floor because I'm not using a ladder. And there is Rockwell, and as we all know, the song "Somebody's Watching Me," and
Yeah, so you were 18. I was 11-ish.
11, about to turn 12.
I remember at the end of that year, or school year anyway, I was this was like 6th grade for me. I remember that song being on the radio of the bus as we went to 6th grade camp. So there's a little piece of my life for you, and all the kids singing it.
Now, also, there were some soundtracks. I'm skipping around my list a little bit here, but you can read my handwriting.
Don't skip around, Troy. I need directions.
There was a soundtrack, and one of those soundtracks was 1984's Footloose.
Oh,
Dancing Kevin Bacon. Now,
well, who doesn't like to dance Kevin Bacon?
Now, those of us that are fans of Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, we remember that a great hero named Kevin Bacon helped out a town with a bunch of people with sticks up their butts, which which was a terribly cruel, torturous way to resolve things, or at least that's what Gamora thought. There was a lot of dancing in Footloose, there was a lot of music, but this single definitely captivated our attentions. Not as much as some. 1984 is heavily populated with some big music, and we're going to get there. Now, along with this, 1984 also gave us the Alan Parsons Project. Alan Parsons actually managed to get 2 albums out, one at the beginning and one at the end of 1984. Now, this is Ammonia Avenue, and it is, of the two, my more favorite of the two. The second one was Vulture Culture. Vulture Culture is not a bad album, but it's not my favorite. But Ammonia Avenue, that one has songs like Don't Answer Me and You Don't Believe. So good things coming off of this album. And Kevin's giving us a little bit of sound there.
Yeah, I don't know which one this is.
Yeah, don't drag me into it. I could listen to this
Keep on
whole
talking,
album.
Troy. Keep on talking.
So we got the self-titled album from the Smiths, in 1984. We also got an excellent piece of music. There they are. I mean, the Smiths are most assuredly that staple in new wave, but they had that sort of darker, bleaker sound. They were on the cutting edge, if you will, of what would become known as Gothic music. But at this point in time, nobody was referring to it as goth. It was still pretty much new wave. Again, it was just a little bit darker than a lot of your synth pop new wave. This album was not one of their biggest. There would be more songs that would come a little bit later, but that's Charming Man, right?
This Charming Man.
This Charming Man. So 1984 also gave us, Kevin, Queen and the Works. Now, Kevin and I both love Queen's album, The Game, especially a Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Dragon Attack, and Another One Bites the Dust. But Works gives us Radio Gaga, and it gives us Hammer to Fall, and it gives us, oh my Lord, there was another really good song, and now Kevin's playing sound from Radio Gaga, which is such a fantastic song. The Works definitely deserves your time and attention.
Give me a little bit more sound on my headphones. My headphones are kind of quiet.
Right here?
There we go. Thanks, Troy.
Absolutely. Always happy to help out there with the
I can hear you.
Hey, fancy that. So trying not to shout into this microphone. That's what this floating thing is over here. It's my microphone. Trying not to yell into it. I'm sure EK appreciates me not shouting into his equipment. So now, I had mentioned in previous shows, as the 1980s went on, older guard bands trying very hard to stay relevant, putting out things, adapting, changing with the times.
Now I'm breaking stuff.
Now Kevin's breaking stuff.
What disconnect?
The clip, the device.
So Kevin's getting his microphone readjusted here so he can hear himself think. But while he's doing that, I'm going to mention that this is the year of Roger Daltrey's album, Parting. Partying is not hard.
I like this a million times better. Thank you, Eric.
Also, we get to see Lou Reed with his 1984 album, New Sensations. Get me centered up there, Kev. Lou Reed, we all remember Lou Reed from things like Take a Walk on the Wild Side. Well, Lou Reed in New Sensations gave us I Love You, Suzanne, Endlessly Jealous, My Red Joystick, Down at the Arcade, My Friend George, Doing the Things We Want To. A great many good songs came off of this album, which went out of print and was very difficult to find. I had a hard time finding it. I eventually did, but I don't understand why, because that album had some really noteworthy things on it. Along with guys like Roger Daltrey and Lou Reed, I had already mentioned Jefferson Starship, and I'd already mentioned Grace Slick. Well, hey, REM gave us their second big album here. They had already given us Murmur, which gave us Radio Free Europe. That was just last year. This year, they gave us The Reckoning. And The Reckoning had songs like South Central Rain and Second Guessing, Don't Go Back to Rockville.
What do you
others.
reckon was your favorite, Troy?
Oh, I just like the whole thing. I listened to that album from beginning to end. It was hard to find tracks that I didn't like, honestly. Also, their second big American release, charting even higher than the first, was In Excess with their album The Swing. Now, 1984's The Swing gave us the big single, The Original Sin. Dream On White Boy, Dream On Black Girl.
Right.
That was a great song, and it really connected to people, and it got a lot of radio play. Controversial that it might have been. I didn't think it was so terribly controversial, but so anyway, the Ferris brothers and friends, Michael Hutchence, Kirk Pengilly, and Gary Beers, and the three Ferris brothers, chugging right along. In Excess, The Swing, a darn fine piece of music. You also, Kevin, do you remember Run DMC?
Oh, I remember Run DMC.
1984, we got the self-titled Run DMC. This is a time of self-titled. So it was an interesting piece of hip-hop, I think, myself, because the beats are deep but lower key and slower paced. It doesn't have the faster, somewhat more frenetic pace of later hip-hop, but their rhyming sensibilities are rock solid. Run DMC, great act. I'd recommend picking that album up. Listen to that album and then listen to some of their later stuff and see how it is that they evolved. Also, with names with little acronyms in them, 1984 gives us Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark with their album Junk Culture. Junk Culture, among other things, has the song Tesla Girls. It has songs not as well known, but there were some pretty good ones on here. I love OMD, and OMD is certainly very elemental in the new wave music movement at the time. I'm having a hard time talking here.
What are we playing off of that? Junk Culture itself?
Where's the track list?
Apollo, Never Turn Away, Love and Violence, Hard Day, All Wrapped Up, White Trash, Talking Loud and Clear.
Oh, Talking Loud and Clear. That is definitely the best song on the album.
All right.
Your mileage may vary, but I'm going to suggest that you listen to the whole album, but especially the song Talking Loud and Clear. Got a neat little sound to it. Kevin's playing a sound bit.
There we are.
The scarecrow in the video there. So earlier we had seen a split up. Now we're down here with this guy and this guy. So the band Pink Floyd had run its course, and the various members of the band had gone their separate ways. Roger Waters one way, David Gilmour and the others a different way. Now, eventually, David Gilmour and Nick Mason and Richard Wright would reform Pink Floyd without Roger Waters. But during this time, Roger Waters put out the album The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. This album proved that Roger Waters was the driving storytelling force within Pink Floyd. This album tells the story of someone hitchhiking their way across the United States. And the song that holds the title of the album was actually known as 501. So at 5:01 a.m., that's this element of the character's story. And there's the snippet from it.
Oh, this is a weird video where he's taking from movies. I wish I could show you the video at the same time.
Yeah, but David Gilmour, however, also put out his own solo album. Now, David Gilmour had his album About Face. And something that I've always found interesting, but I've never actually known for sure, is where does that title come from? Because the title could be that this album is about face, like quite literally your face and your honor. But it could also be the military term about face, as in David Gilmour is taking a turn away from where he had been going. I would love to have dinner with David Gilmour and ask questions like that. This album also features other musician friends of his, not from Pink Floyd, but people like Peter Gabriel and Pete Townsend contributing to his album. He would contribute to their albums at different points in time later, and I'll mention those as we go. So About Face had songs like All Lovers Are Deranged, Blue Light, Out of the Blue, Until We Sleep. Lots of good stuff came off of this. That guitarist, David Gilmour, his album does not thematically tell a story as does Roger Waters, but he definitely has a ton of musical talent. We're coming up now on, now I don't have an image of this, so you could stop looking, but Berlin had their next album, Love Life. Now, you may remember Berlin, their first album had the Metro and the very controversial song Sex, as in I'm a ...
You're a sex, Troy? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No.
Oh.
But so Love Life had the single No More Words. There are other good songs off of this, like...
okay, but no more promises, Troy.
And No More Promises. Terry Nunn. I was so fascinated with that woman. I could just watch that Bonnie and Clyde video all day. And as long as it was rotated on MTV, I frequently did.
It would be pretty easy to do so.
I'm pretty sure that I have seen it up to 3 times in a single day watching for rotations. Spent a lot of time in front of MTV. Also, so now this is the Americans' year for Nina and 99 Red Balloons, which was 99 Luftballons. Now, of course, this is the eccentricity of the release of music in Europe versus the release in the United States.
So this is the American one, whereas last year...
we had the German.
Yeah.
And along with 99 Red Balloons, we also have, let's see, where up there I am. Big, big, big. So
Perhaps
somebody,
the biggest.
Somebody call the police because Bruce Springsteen hijacked music itself. Yes, he did. Bruce Springsteen dropped the 1984 album Born in the USA, and man,
Wait, hold on, let me turn this up all the way.
That rattles in our ears.
Oh.
Look at that song list. I'm on Fire, Cover Me, Dancing in the
That
Dark.
just gave me an underbite. That was so much Bruce.
Bobby Jean, No Surrender, Born in the USA, My Hometown, Glory Days. I think radio stations connectively played every single song at one time or another off this album.
Certainly.
There were so many good songs.
It's almost 4th of July, Troy, and those of you, our listeners and watchers in non-American locations, you have no idea how ridiculous people get with their patriotism. And this is part of it now, and it has been since 1984.
Bruce Springsteen deserves all the applause and all the accolades. Man, I wonder if he even knew how huge this album was. I mean, like, this even more for him than Let's Dance for David Bowie. Remember that?
And then of course there's this one that he's...
Oh, yeah.
That stupid dance?
That stupid dance that you just keep doing?
Listen, Troy, as a pale man, there's only so many dances we're allowed, and that's one of them.
So you ride a dark horse?
I don't know. You can give me a piggyback ride?
So 1984 also gave us this lady, The Glamorous Life by Sheila E. That's important because not only is The Glamorous Life a really fun song, but also we get
She don't need it, Troy.
Are you sure?
She don't need it.
She don't need a man's touch?
That's right.
Also, Morris Day and the Time. Morris Day and the Time, also in 1984. And do you know what that's leading to? That's leading to the other big centerpiece of 1984, and that's Prince at Purple Rain. And it's a tie in my mind as to which of these, Born in the USA or Purple Rain, which one of these things was bigger. But Prince was not going to be outperformed by anybody. And not only was he doing this, but as I mentioned, with Morris Day and the Time, with Sheila E., with Apollonia on her own solo career, with producing music for Sheena Easton, Prince was everywhere. So there he is now with Jungle Love, which was featured in the soundtrack of Purple Rain. Prince was amazing.
Also to, what's it, Dogma. Just saying.
Well, now, much less big was the post-punk stylings of Public Image Limited. PIL, led by John Lydon, formerly known as Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, this new band.
This is them, right?
This is not them. But
Are,
this
are we
album,
behind?
you are behind. So,
Let's just go crazy, Troy.
oh, we're going crazy. So, along with Flowers of Romance and This Is Not a Love Song and Public Image and Bodies, so The Order of Death and Bad Life. Now, the actual title of the album, This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get, there is no title track. But fans, and there probably are at least 5 of you, fans of the 1990 film Hardware will remember the Johnny Lydon PIL song, The Order of Death, because it's featured prominently in the film's soundtrack. It only took from 1984 to 1990 for anybody to recognize the value in that song. My favorite song off this album, incidentally, was 1981, although Tie Me to the Length of That is also a good tune. Moving right along, and let's get into some Critical Condition. Why? Because new wave is a thing, post-punk is a thing, straight up rock is a thing, hip-hop is a thing. You know what else is a thing? Heavy metal. Heavy metal music. Critical Condition, Quiet Riot. Yes. Quiet
really?
Riot. And Quiet Riot wasn't alone for having solid heavy metal. Rock and roll taken a little bit farther, a little more extreme. We also this year had VOA from Sammy Hagar. Now, many of you will remember the song I Can't Drive 55.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, this guy. So, VOA not only gave us I Can't Drive 55, but it also gave us the song Dick in the Dirt. That became my favorite song off the album. But Sammy Hagar, solid hard rocker, definitely, and eventually an instrumental piece of the band Van Halen, replacing David Lee Roth. We'll talk about that one later. So we have legacy music also in this time. In 1984, we saw the son of John Lennon. We saw Julian Lennon and his album Valat. And Valat sold very well, and it kind of cemented that, hey, this kid is the spitting image of his dad, and he's got that honeyed voice, not unlike his father. I kind of wonder if maybe Julian Lennon wasn't pushed a little hard into becoming his father's legacy, but instead of being allowed to grow into himself and do his own thing. Nevertheless, very talented, like I said, very pleasant melodic voice, and who knows
What's happening here? So, and Mike Smith, you're right. It was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I feel dirty inside now.
So on that twisting of new wave synth pop music, also with a slightly darker age, we see Some Great Reward from the band Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode giving us that hit single People Are People. But this album also had the song Something to Do. There were good songs to be found on Some Great Reward. So don't just stop at the radio single. Get into the whole thing. Listen side to side. Or if you're listening to CD, just listen to the whole thing. But yes, People Are People. Why should it be?
Listen to this. Just the drums are great in this.
Oh, right.
It's beautiful.
So David Bowie followed up Let's Dance with his album Tonight, and Tonight featured the best known song, I think, off of Tonight was actually Blue Jean. Now, once again, David Bowie kind of created, there he is, having created, let me just move that out of your face. David Bowie created a larger-than-life persona, not unlike Ziggy Stardust, not unlike some of his earlier works. And so Blue Jean might not have jumped away quite as far. This was his Lord Byron persona. But nevertheless, it was a popular song. It was a popular club staple. It was a heavily rotated video. There was a short edited version of this video, and then there was the much longer Jazzin' for Blue Jean. This is the year, Kevin, that a guy named George Michael earned an exclamation point.
What?
This is the year that Wham made it big.
Wham.
Wham. And thank you very much, Ryan Reynolds, referencing that song or that album in the first Deadpool film. And it was not my favorite album of the year, I will admit that. But now that that movie has come and gone, I can't not think about it.
All right.
So U2, The Unforgettable Fire. And I know that there are people out there listening who this is not their favorite album. But U2 just continuing on after October, after Boy, after War. The Unforgettable Fire had excellent songs on it. Not least of which was Pride in the Name of Love. So again, just establishing themselves very much as a rock and roll force to be reckoned with. I mean, a force of nature. But another force of nature, a band that we had come to know over the previous decade, definitely a top 40s AM radio staple, was Hall & Oates. And their 1984 album, Big Bam Boom. Big Bam Boom gave us, not least of which was the hit single Out of Touch, but breaking away from their standard was the little-known song, Bank on Your Love. Bank on Your Love is an excellent song, and people should give that some listening.
I'm going to bank on your love of this song, Troy, and play that for you.
Yeah. That harder guitar part, that harder rock element, not like, the songs like Rich Girl and Make My Dreams Come True. Very different for them. But you know what happened in 1984, Kevin?
The Olympics, they were in Los Angeles, right?
Not only that, but David Byrne and Tina Weymouth and Jerry Harrison decided to collectively stop making sense. And so in 1984, we had the Talking Heads and Stop Making Sense. And that live showpiece, it collected songs of theirs from previous albums. They performed them live. There was sort of documentary concert footage. The album itself had... Stop Making Sense. The album itself had liner notes that were written by David Byrne containing some of his snippets of wisdom.
With all this good music you've gotten from 1984, I'm going to hurt my neck again.
So, hey. Right. 1984, and we were talking about films a little earlier. 1984 is a year of films and soundtracks. Now, we already hit Footloose, but 1984, you cannot avoid mentioning Beverly Hills Cop.
What? Hold on. I gotta
can't-
play that.
Right, you got to mention Beverly Hills Cop because it features the song Axel F. But it also features The Heat Is On by Glenn Frey. Now, Glenn Frey came from the band The Eagles. And Glenn Frey was not alone coming from the Eagles, because we also had Don Henley, who had previously given us one of the title tracks to the heavy metal, the soundtrack album of that animated film. But we also had Don Henley. Don Henley gave us Building the Perfect Beast.
What about this?
There
we go.
Axel F.
This was so exciting in 1984. Like, oh my God, it's all synthesizers, the whole thing. There's nothing else.
But the song really holds up. It makes you want to tap your feet and bop your head and
It
maybe
is.
get up and show off some funky moves there.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but it does make you want to move a bit.
For the record, Kevin has some funky moves.
Funky, if you mean by funky, you mean a little bit stinky, then all right.
So Don Henley in Building the Perfect Beast gave us, among other things, Down at the Sunset Grill and All She Wants to Do Is Dance. And probably the best known song was The Boys of Summer. Don Henley really managed to bring himself out of the shadow of the Eagles. I think, honestly, all of the Eagles did well. Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Joe Walsh certainly did very well coming out of the Eagles. But then hell would freeze over and we'd have the Eagles do a reunion tour. We'll do that in our 90s segment.
Listen, Troy, we've got to get through this, or you're gonna get a new attitude.
So 1984, in terms of soundtracks, also gave us the Eurythmics. 1984, the film starring John Hurt, but 1984 for the love of Big Brother. Dave Stewart, Annie Lennox, the Eurythmics. 1984 is such an excellent album. The songs were all used in the actual soundtrack. Some of the songs, excuse me, some of the songs borrowing elements like newspeak and doublespeak.
Like
So-
this, double plus good.
Double Plus Good, my favorite song on this album. Oh man, Annie Lennox could just sing me the phone book and I'd be happy. Also, though, I think the first single I heard off of this album before I bought the whole album was Sex Crime, 1984. And that was excellent. So, look, we've got some of our studio audience, or some of our
Enos,
Facebook.
we mentioned you earlier, by the way.
And I see Kevin's out there, Dan Brown's out there. So 1984, you want to hear another one that was huge, Kevin? Absolutely huge. Madonna, Like a Virgin. Where is all this big music coming from? My
And
God.
everybody saw all her outfits and they were like, nah. No, I'm not buying it.
You know what? I don't think any of us cared. Not really. And she would just keep doing it, and she would just keep coming up with these things. So, Like a Virgin, Material Girl.
As I was saying, this is one of those. This is one of the first CDs that I ever played. This and the other, the Madonna album from the previous year. My cousin and I would play her parents' CDs because I didn't have CDs. That was amazing, back in 1984. But this was like, oh my God, we would play this over and over and dance around her basement.
Now, again, with musicians sort of reinventing themselves, coming away from their bands, coming out of their old shadows, Roger Hodgson. The name might not be familiar to you, but Roger Hodgson was the frontman of Supertramp. Now, you may remember the album Breakfast in America, the logical song, Take the Long Way Home, Breakfast in America, the title track itself. Well, Roger Hodgson did this album, In the Eye of the Storm, where he produced it himself and where he played all of the instruments himself.
Wow.
I had no idea he was that musically talented, but he is. And so the song, not the title song, but the main single off of this was Sleeping with the Enemy, Had a Dream. And in that song was the title of the album itself, but also Hooked on a Problem and Give Me Life and I'm Not Afraid. Very good songs. They're long songs, 5 and 6 and 7 minutes long, so a little bit too long for radio play. The title track itself had an edit, a radio edit, but the album version was longer, in fact, than. Sorry, dropping my props. It was actually longer than the album, the shorter rather than the album
props?
version. So the Kinks. Continuing the Kinks, we remember the Kinks as Lola. We remember the Kinks earlier with Come Dancin'. Well, here they are. They give us the word of mouth with the singles Do It Again, Sold Me Out, Living on a Thin Line. Also songs like Massive Reduction, Summer's Gone. There are a lot of good songs on that album. I bought that album in late 1984. And I just played it over and over. There were a couple of albums in my rotation at the time, like, for example, The Cars and Heartbeat City. I just couldn't not listen to that album, Heartbeat City. And you had songs like Magic, which was Magic. Summer turns me upside down.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to wrap it up with the last album from this band before they disbanded, and their lead singer Peter Wolf went in his own direction. There's a good version of the good view of that. There it is, folded out so you can see the whole thing. But the last album from this band, the band was the Jay Giles Band. You remember songs like Love Stinks, and you may remember Centerfold from Freeze Frame. You're thinking, wow, Freeze Frame was such a big album. How did this one not do well? Well, it didn't, and they broke up. This is You're Getting Even While I'm Getting Odd. And it features songs like Californicatin'. I love to make fun of Kevin on that one. Californicatin', Concealed Weapons, Tell 'em Jonesy. It's got some good stuff, and it's that quirky Jay Giles, Peter Wolfish stuff. But, yeah. And that wrapped up 1984. There was a lot more music.
Well, Troy, that was our show for this week. 45 minutes.
But now Kevin is ready.
By the way, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, this apparently we're rolling. We have to leave in about 15 minutes, so we're gonna make it an hour. And EK is breathing a sigh of relief because, oh my God. But Troy can't be bothered because he's got to get up early in the morning and stuff like that. But I mean, I got to get up in the world. But I'm just gonna open my laptop and work in my bed. But anyway, the important thing is,
like he does,
like I do. Hey, you know what comes out at 12:01 a.m.? Spider-Man: Far From Home. And this guy is not gonna miss out on that. So I'll be there. So we gotta leave soon because we're down in Fredericksburg. It's far.
Breaking news: Kevin has tickets.
Thanks, EK. All right. Where are we at? We're doing television.
We're doing television.
Television. Troy David. You know what came out in 1984? Well, let's say a lot of things.
A lot of things.
A lot of things came out in 1984. Debuting this year, along with classics like Night Court and two helicopter shows, Blue Thunder and Airwolf.
Oh wow.
But My Little Pony. Bronies out there, I realize we don't have crows on Comics Online anymore, and we tend to not even say his name, but friendship is magic. This is before friendship was magic. Friendship was just the thing that they did on My Little Pony originally, but now it's magic. Thank you. Thank you, EK. Along with that, we had things like Danger Mouse. We had Heathcliff. We had a show that had a great opening song but failed to come around. Kids Incorporated. We had Dragon's Lair, the cartoon, also something. It's like, oh, the Bluth animation, it'll be great. Oh, what? They exported it to someone really cheap. This is terrible. This is a bad show. Along with not only did Michael Jackson get set on fire by Pepsi in 1984, but Richard Pryor, who would have flaming problems of his own at some point, had his own cartoon, Pryor's Place. Why did he have his cartoon? That's weird.
For the same reason that George Carlin was Mr. Conductor on Thomas the Tank Engine, because he's a believer in children's programming.
And also, like, the very filthy comedian. I'm not. I'm me. I'm all about the swears, but some people would be like, oh, you would think that people would put the brakes on that.
I can keep it clean.
Punky Brewster came out. The Transformers came out. I don't know why I didn't put this on. Put that on there. Who else did I put? Oh, Voltron, the original 1984, the one with the lions, the first season with the lions. Which was originally called Go Lion.
Go Lion, when it was in Japan.
Yeah, and it was imported.
Yes.
Tell us the story.
So when you see a cartoon or a set of toys and it's referred to as Go Lion and you're thinking, oh, is that a ripoff of Voltron? No, it is Voltron. Voltron is what they called it for the American audiences. And the Go Lions, that is Go in Japanese, is 5. There were 5 lions, obviously.
Go Lion. Well, I like it. Oh, and Enos says Vanessa Williams' Penthouse issue. Thank you very much, Enos. And also, he will be at the theater tomorrow night. Bring the Penthouse issue, because educational reasons. I'm gonna need to check it out.
Yeah.
I don't have the internet apparently.
Research purposes.
I'm sure that would just come up on Google at this point. Pryor's Place was an excellent vehicle for a kids show, says Enos.
Speaking of needing Jesus.
And I was gonna end with this one actually, but just go and just be like cartoons, and in additional fiction. Michael Landon began his 111 episode run of Highway to Heaven, and listen, if you were a Midwestern lady, you were into this flippin' show, like woo. It was like sploosh. Michael Landon, oh my, that angel could take me up somewhere. I don't know what you're talking about. That's what all the ladies were saying in the 80s.
Yeah, remember, he's an angel, lady, so keep it clean.
Well, they're like, whatever, it's an angel, it's fine. God says it's okay. Michael Landon as emissary of the Sky Daddy. For 100 it's okay.
And for the record, we are all going to hell in a wheelbarrow. Muppet Babies.
So last year we had Fraggle Rock, but this year we got Muppet Babies. Sing a song, Troy.
I am not going to.
Muppet Babies will make a poo for you. I don't know how it goes. I don't remember. But it was. I enjoyed that show.
In more ways than one. This is a big year, though. 1984 is a big year for the Muppets because you have the Muppet Babies, but you also had in the comic side, Marvel launched Star Comics. And we had the Muppets Take Manhattan, the movie.
Yeah.
Marvel did the comic adaptation of the Muppets Take Manhattan. And Star Comics ran that Muppet Babies comic, all ages comic with the Muppet Kids.
True story. Also, a show that should have kept going, but was the launch in my experience for Jason Bateman. Was It's Your Move. Do you remember the show, Troy?
I actually do not.
It was so Jason Bateman is like this teenage con artist, and he's trying to keep the mom's boyfriend out of the mom's life, but the mom's boyfriend is also really bright, and it was really well written to my recollection. And granted, I haven't seen it since maybe I don't know. I believe that it was available somewhere after it was originally aired, but maybe it wasn't. Who knows? I would love to watch all of these again just to find out. But Bateman, we've seen in a million things. You know, obviously, just go on Netflix, and he's all over the place. You know, Ozark and for a drama and for a comedy. What do we got? Have we discussed the Supergirl movie? We haven't got to movies.
We haven't gotten
Yet.
to movies yet.
We haven't
You
got to
just be
movies.
patient.
We're gonna have to go next week. Honestly, we're gonna
Yes.
have to go next week. It's terrible. But anyway, that was it. I believe It's Your Move ended in like a cliffhanger type of thing where they'll come back. It'll be fine. But for some reason they didn't, and everyone was surprised about it. Important in my life for 1984 television was V, The Visitors, also known as V the series. Was a like a mini series basically. Didn't have a ton of episodes, but it kind of blew my mind with the with its originality. Like here we're gonna spell out an entire invasion of Earth by these reptilian aliens. Spoilers to something that's 35 years old. The aliens were reptiles and they ate birds.
Mice. Well, they ate birds too.
And mice.
But,
Just like reptiles do, right? Come on.
Yeah, right. They can't help being what they are.
But anyway, and it eventually came back, and they had, new people in it.
Yeah, they had that remake back in the.
They had the remake, yeah. Yeah, but Mark Singer was the main person, and then of course Robert Englund was in it. Who you will know as Freddy Krueger.
And don't forget Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironside as well. But it had a decent amount in it. It had a full season of episodes, 20 episodes. I mean, nearly a full season. But it felt very very event television, much like we have today with our big shows of today. Whether it be Lost or Game of Thrones or whatever. And then of course later, we had V, The Final Battle.
Yeah.
But that was I
I didn't realize that A.C. Crispin wrote the novelization on that. A.C. Crispin also wrote the Han Solo trilogy. In the old Legends Star Wars expanded universe.
Nice. Well, in any case, that was that TV 1984? Is that all of it? Is that the Miami Vice began? Murder, She Wrote began? Charles in Charge began?
Wow. Miami Vice. I'd forgotten that this is where that started. I certainly watched a lot of it. I watched Hunter.
Who's the Boss and Cosby Show debuted
God.
on the same day, September 20th. And obviously the Cosby Show won.
Oh, the Cosby Show would just like dominate.
Well, Bill, they were offered some drinks and they just kind of went to sleep. It's fine.
Oh, Kevin.
So just let it happen.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway,
Oh, and The Master, that martial arts show with Shokasugi and Lee Van Cleef. I actually caught several episodes of that. I must have had after-school work or something going on, part-time job, because I did not watch, and that was the kind of show that I was hardwired to being into.
All right. Well, it's 10:56, Troy. What do we have to wrap this up without going into? Oh, let's go into the Eagle Awards.
So 1984's Eagle Awards. I just grabbed a few of the bigger ones here. So Eagle awarded for Best New Title was Power Pack. Which, of course, Louise Simonson, the Power Kids.
Yeah.
That series premiered in 1984, late in August, I believe. Group Book was once again the New Teen Titans. And the New Teen Titans, also in 1984, split into the deluxe series New Teen Titans, as well as the main book, the newsstand book, becoming known as Tales of the New Teen Titans at issue 41. Best character was a lesser-known character. It was Tokwamada, the Inquisitor, from the Nemesis the Warlock feature of 2000 AD. It was a British title. Nemesis the Warlock was a very well done, kind of cerebral, definitely trippy with that Kevin Mills art. It was good though. What I read, I've never been able to complete the arc, but what I've read, I very much enjoyed. Best artist, favorite artist, again, Alan Davis. And so people overseas, people doing the British Eagle Awards must have really loved his work on things like, Captain Britain was what I predominantly knew him for. And then much later, he would do so many other things. And there was a special Roll of Honor award for Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko, obviously co-creator of Spider-Man, or co-artist on Spider-Man. The Question, Mr. A, so many other things. 1984 was, in terms of endings, this will go really quick. 1984 was the death of Carl Burgos. Carl Burgos was in his 70s when he passed away. He was he was creative artist on the original Human Torch in Marvel Comics #1. That was published by Timely, but the title of the book was actually Marvel Comics. Also, Stan Lee's right-hand man, he was called. Saul Brodsky passed away in 1984. I think I had known of his work without knowing his name. His name became important to me in that issue of What If. What if the Marvel bullpen became the Fantastic Four? And so it was Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and Flo Bernstein and Saul Brodsky as the Human Torch. That was where a name finally connected for me.
Nice.
We also lost that year, 1984, we lost Al Avison. Al Avison had done Captain America in the golden age of comics, and he had also done The Whizzer, Marvel's other super speedster. They had two of them. They had Hurricane, who was later retconned into being an Eternal, and they had the Whizzer, who would go on to join the All-Winners Squad. Not that Wiz.
Oh, sorry.
Bob Frank, who would marry Miss America, and they were the parents of Nucleo.
The Nuclear Man?
Yes, the big giant yellow guy kind of would go crazy. Only Nucleo eventually was cured of his excess radioactivity and got a job as a groundskeeper. He really loved growing things.
So you're saying that, I'm just putting it, groundskeeper, Willie, Whizzer. I'm just saying that everything just comes back around, Troy. So it's 11 Eastern time, and we got a GTFO. Next week we're gonna have 1984's cinema as well as comic books.
Yes, indeed.
If you haven't, so Troy has seen the bonus feature laden Endgame.
Yes.
And there's a Far From Home like lead in of some sort.
So you have to stay. You'll get a greeting from James Russo. Sit through the entire movie, sit through the credits. You'll hear the sound of the hammer building the next phase of the Marvel Universe. You get a very moving tribute of Stan Lee and his cameo appearances from the MCU. Those of you that are looking for his cameos from the Raimi Spider-Man, or any of his others, not here. This is only the MCU cameos. And there is a special deleted scene, a scene that could not have been put into the main film. It wasn't completed, it wasn't finished, but it did have some relevance, and they thought we deserved to be able to see it, so they put it in. It'll be a special feature on the 4K Blu-ray, I'm sure. Kevin will get that. If he hasn't already upgraded to the 8K or the 12K or whatever.
Are those things? Anyway,
Yes.
I just get whatever the highest resolution is that Amazon offers me. And I just buy it there rather than picking up the physical copy, because you know what? Things get damaged. I would rather just have I don't think Amazon's going anywhere. But then again, that's what I said about Blip TV.
Bet on the losing horse there.
I have bet on the losing horse. I do not buy Betamax. Anyway, so that's the show for this week. We're gonna do part 2 of 1984 next week. So for Troy David Phillips and for everybody at Comics Online and for everything geek pop culture, I'm Kevin Goswan, and this is Comics Online.
Swag.
At FXBG Public Radio.
Swag.
Bitches!
Swag. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times. Swag. 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 Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times.
Represent those of Comics Online, any participants, or any employers past, present, or future. If you would have thought otherwise without hearing this disclaimer, maybe you're not ready for this whole internet thing, much less Time Lords. Or maybe you're instead one of our smart and sexy fans who appreciate foul language, mogwai gremlins, biting sarcasm, and everything geek pop culture. If you have comments or questions for the Comics Online podcasters, post on our Facebook page, tweet us on Twitter, or email us at podcast@comicsonline.com. All original material in this podcast copyright Comics Online.
Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times over. Swag. 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 Swag 1,000 times over. Swag 1,000 times over. Swag 1,000 times over.